Hey everybody, welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today we are going to take a look at my Stamina Templar. This is Spartan Unleashed. Let's jump into the build. So first thing that we are running is the Ring of the Wild Hunt, and as a Templar you know that class typically is considered a slow class, right? And so you're going to need some type of movement speed, something or other, whether it be channeled acceleration or running a bow for the dodge roll and major expedition off of that. Because we were short on space on our bars and the way that we have been playing Spartan, we went with the Ring of the Wild Hunt, so that way we just have this movement speed. And you can see it says increase your movement speed by 15% while in combat, and because I still have the swift trait on there, that means in combat we're going to be moving at a plus 21% movement speed. And then increase your movement speed by 45% out of combat, and so that means we're going to be moving at 51% additional movement speed outside of combat. And so when we're moving around the districts, Imperial City, Cyrodiil, wherever it's at, or battlegrounds, we can get from point A to point B very quickly, and that's good. And normally when you run a monster set, or a mythic item, what that does is it can break up your monster set, and so that's what we've experienced here. Right now we're just running medium Balors for that additional weapon damage, and I would say that the trade on this, it's invigorating. If I get, you know, a bunch of transmute crystals, I would probably go impen on that, especially with impen going into next patch. It's going to be reduced in value, and so we're going to need as much um, critical resistance as possible. But anyways, we're just running one piece Balors, and the first set that we are running on this Stamplar is going to be Eternal Vigor. A reoccurring theme right now. This is probably a meta armor set for sure for a lot of different classes. I just released it on a Necromancer tank. I just released it on Frost Fangs werewolf build. I just released it on Wonder Woman, a Magplar, and here we are on a Stamplar, and we're running Eternal Vigor. And really the thing about it is where heals are at right now on PvP with Battle Spirit and everything. Rally is unreliable. I'll get a full rally tick of 6k sometimes. Like I let rally run its entire duration and get a 6k heal, and that's subpar. That's not going to get it done. And so right now, really the only way to combat that is going recoveries and looking into some health recovery. And so Eternal Vigor right now is actually helping me get through, and a lot of people get through this sporadic healing situation with Greymoor and healing reduction through Battle Spirit. So Eternal Vigor fit the bill. You get a lot of recoveries. You can see that the 5-piece, it says add 333 stamina and magicka recovery while your health is above 50%. And so that 5 pieces in addition to the 2, 3, and 4. So you just have a lot of recoveries coming in with this set, and a line of max health. That's great. And then you can see adds 1,000 health recovery while you're under 50% health. And so when you invest into resistances in this game, resistances will help negate or offset damage. If you were to invest into health recovery in this game, so passively resistances, you invest in them, and then passively those resistances offset damage, right? It makes the damage less. If you do the same with health recovery, it passively, you invest in it and then it works for you. Damage comes in, health recovery offsets the damage. And so right now that's how I'm kind of combating the healing problems during Greymoor, is a combination of both. I'm pushing high resistances with high health recovery, and then figuring out where I can find the damage at. And so it's been working very well for me. If you want to run 2 damage sets together, Ancient Dragon Guard and Fury, do that. You do you. So, but this has been what's working for me. The second set that we are running is Titanborn, and there's an actual rhyme or reason to why I'm running Titanborn, but the physical penetration you get from Titanborn on the 2-piece is the same as what you'd get from New Moon. The weapon damage for the 3-piece is the same as what you'd get on like the 2 or 3-piece for New Moon. And then the 4-piece is a little different on this. You actually get an extra line of max stamina, so that's good. And then the 5 pieces adds another 108 weapon damage and some crit. So it's important to know when you add the third line, the 127 weapon damage plus the 5-piece 108 weapon damage, we're about halfway to what New Moon can provide, and especially going to next patch where New Moon's going to get nerfed, right? It's going to lose like 70 or 80 weapon damage, so that makes this set that much more appealing. But I really like the 4-piece on this, the max stamina line. But anyways, the 5-piece on this actually makes this competitive with New Moon right off the bat. Just right out the box, because while my weapon damage doesn't match up with New Moon, my additional penetration, that extra 1225 physical penetration of the 5-piece stacked on top of the 1470, the extra penetration helps us cover the distance between what New Moon is doing and what Titanborn's doing. And so I tested both of them out, and I like that. I can tell you as soon as we fall below 75% health, Titanborn ends up becoming the better option. And in a PvP scenario, Battlegrounds, Imperial City, Districts, Cyrodiil, there are times during fights where you're operating under 75% health. That's just the norm for you. And so in that moment, this set is outproducing or outperforming New Moon. So I like that. And then obviously when you fall under 50% health, let's just read the 5-piece here. Adds 108 weapon damage, adds 1225 physical penetration. That's at 100% health. This bonus doubles to 217 weapon damage and 2,451 physical penetration when you are under 75% health. And it's that one right there. When we're under 75% health and we have that 217 weapon damage plus our third bonus weapon damage, we're very similar to what New Moon is or will be, right? But the physical penetration starts to become a bigger gap on Titanborn. And then this bonus quadruples to 435 weapon damage and 4,900 physical penetration when you're under 50% health. And so we all know that stamina classes, the heals scale off of weapon damage, and excuse me. So when we fall under 50% health, that's when our weapon damage is going to be at the highest on this build. And so my thought process in throwing this build together, you need to understand this, is I know that Titanborn has its value when we're hanging out at those different stages. The 25%, the 50%, right? That's when we're at our most dangerous. How do I slow the death process? How do I slow it to where I can hang out in those areas more safely? And the way we do that is through health recovery and through resistances. And so if I can increase my resistances enough to where they're not going to be able to burst me down and we hang out in those areas, we're very dangerous. That's the thought process on this. And so I basically put a build together around that. Now, if I had a choice, I don't think that a two-hander axe would be the way to go. Two-hander maul sharpened would be the way to go, and it would increase our penetration by even more. I can tell you that our penetration gets to be 14,000 plus on this build when we are under 50% health, and I'll do a screenshot so you guys can see that, but we have 14,000 over 14,000 penetration when we're under 50% health, and so we're very dangerous in that moment. And we're also going to be at 4,500 weapon damage on our two-hand bar during that moment. And so 4,500, some people are like, dude, I push 5K, I push 5,500, I push 6K, I push 7K weapon damage or whatever. I don't have a problem killing most people on the 4K to 5K weapon damage. And for me, with where healing is at, we talked about this already, the battle spirit and healing right now in the game being so sporadic and performance being sporadic as well, health recovery and being tanky is the way, and then figuring out where the sweet spot for being able to kill people. And for me, it's at that 4K to 5K. As long as I'm within that range and I've got good sustain, I feel like I can kill a lot of people. I have killed a lot of people. So, um, anyways, two-hand axe probably not the way to go. I would go two-hand maul. Sharpened is nice on this because penetration's kind of theme for us. If you want to try Nirnhoned, go Nirnhoned. You know, it'll take the damage of this. You can see where it says 1,571. It'll go up to 1,800 damage, a little over that. But and we are running Eternal Vigor. We've got defending on our back bar. We're running sword and board, and we're running reinforced for that additional armor value on there. And like I said, for this build, we want to push our resistances up as high as we can on a 5 medium 2 heavy build, and just kind of go from there. So we talked about the gear. Let's talk about the stats. We'll buff up here real quick, and then I want to jump into the abilities, and I'll explain to you how I've been playing this build and why we've been having a lot of success. Um, so first things first, we're on our two-hand bar right now, and you can see we've got 31,000 physical resistance and just under 30,000, or 31,000 spell resistance, 30,000 physical on our two-hand. We go over cap when we jump onto our sword and board, and you can see our recoveries. It was at 2,100 and then 1,300 magic recovery, and then our health recovery is at 1,000, and health recovery goes up to we gain another 1,000, so we have basically 2,000 health recovery on this build. And standing in our rune also, you can see here at the end it says create a rune of celestial protection. The rune grants you major resolve, increasing your physical resistance and spell resistance by basically 5,300. You also recover 240 stamina every 1 second. Because recoveries are based on 2-second increments, this is basically equates to another 4,800, 500, you know, if you round up, but another 500 stamina recovery, right? And so when you're looking at our recoveries, at 2,100, add another 5 onto that. It takes us to 2,600 recovery on that. You can see we're on our sword and board, and we're over cap in our spell resistance, and we're just a hair under on our physical resistance. So, and because we're defending, it was 3,500 on our weapon damage on our sword and board, which isn't too bad to be on sword and board. You can see weapon damage is at 4,000, a little over 4,000 on our two-hand at 100% health. And then because we already looked at the armor set, you can kind of see that, well, when we drop to 75% health, our weapon damage goes up by another 100 plus, and our penetration goes up a lot more. And then it's 50% health, our weapon damage goes up even more. And I'll do a screenshot for you so you can see what the build looks like under 50% health. It's pretty impressive though. 4,500 weapon damage on a cap resistance medium armor build with 2,600 stamina recovery. Not too bad. And then the health recovery, like we said, will get up to 2K when we fall under 50% health because Eternal Vigor, and that's going to help make us feel a little bit more tankier, help us really survive when heals are not what we anticipate them to be. Another thing too, game's acting a little slow here. You can see that our physical penetration is 10,000, 10,591, and when we're at 50% health, add another 4 to almost 5K on top of that, and that puts us at the 14,000, 15,000 penetration. That's a lot of penetration. Okay, there are some light armor people that we're penetrating through completely, and mobs in the game, I think they have 18K penetration or 18K resistances, and so we're almost negating their resistances with our penetration. So we hit NPCs pretty hard, and so let's jump into the abilities here. If you're still here, it's pretty important to see this next part. So All right. Looking at the abilities, first thing we have on our two-hand is biting jabs. It's got a 36, almost 3700 tooltip on it. Applies a slow and gives us major critical, major savagery for additional critical. We're running reverse slice for the splash damage, power of the light for our damage multiplier. Our vigor has an almost 17k tooltip on it, and we're running rally for a burst heal. That's not really a burst heal right now, and we are running Berserker's Rage. And it has just about a 14k tooltip. Let me buff up again here real quick and make sure. Yeah, 15k tooltip on it, and it hits all nearby enemies. If you have not used Berserker's Rage, I can tell you this. I'm going to share a screenshot of you because the second paragraph here, it says this attack ignores the target's resistances and grants you physical and spell resistance equal to the amount ignored from the initial target for 8 seconds. I can tell you this, if I use this ability on a tank that has 30 or 40k resistances, you can stack that 30 or 40k resistances on top of my 30 to 40k resistances. So hitting 60 to 80k resistances is absolutely possible. And so when we're talking about slowing down the damage that's coming in or becoming just ultra tanky, this ability has allowed us to do it. The cost of it at 142 ultimate is fairly low. We get back up to that quick. It's an AoE, so it hits everybody in an area and it hits them hard. It strips the initial target's resistances and gives them to me. I'm going to share a tooltip here. We have over, I hit, this isn't even a tank I hit with this, okay? I hit somebody that had between 20 and 25k resistances. And it took my resistances over 60k in spell resistance and like 40 or 50k in physical resistances. And so when you hit somebody with this, you are stout, okay? Not only did you just bonk everybody with a nice hit, but for the next 8 seconds, you're gonna be just an absolute juggernaut in the fight, and that's why I really like this ability, okay? And the very last part of it too, you are immune to all disabling, snare, and immobilization effects for the duration. You are immune to all disabling, snare, and immobilization effects for the duration. So basically, you're using a movable pot for the next 8 seconds after you bonk somebody and the entire group, and you have all these crazy resistances. There is no stopping you. Just go ham. Right? And so I really like that play style. I'm super tanky, and if they're continuing to put damage into me, I'm not going to be taking the burst that they would expect me to take. It's going to be a gradual process for the next 8 seconds, allowing me to hang out at that 75% health threshold, allowing me to hang out at the 50% health threshold, and get all the bonuses or perks of Titanborn. And so I really like this playstyle. It's been a lot of fun. So I would say that our front bar here is very typical of what you would see from a two-hand Stamplar, right? Biting jabs. A lot of people run Executioner. Excuse me. I actually like reverse slice for the splash damage. I explained this in my other videos, and I run this morph on almost every one of my builds. But the reason it being is if I'm fighting 3 people in front of me, I don't need to kill all 3. I need to get one of them low and within execute range. And as soon as that dude's within execute range, everyone else is going to feel 78% of that splash damage from me executing the one. And that might inspire them to stop being offensive and actually fall back on their back foot and start having to heal a little bit, in turn relieving pressure from me. And so that's been a really good play for me. It's worked out well. Um, so I always run reverse slice. Love that splash damage. And but this is probably very typical of what you would see. And you might actually see Javelin on this bar, but when we jump to our back bar, you're going to see what we look at here. So on my back bar, I'm running Sword and Board, and I really like this playstyle. I've been playing this playstyle on my Old Man Kratos stand-in build, where I have Sword and Board on the back bar, and I use the Sword and Board Shielded Assault. You get a little baby shield. It's not much of anything. It allows you to get maybe one vigor tick or something like that. That's fine. But you can use this at point blank range, and it's a reliable CC. It stuns the target for 3 seconds, and the cost on it isn't too bad at 2,700, 2,800. So I really like this ability a lot as my true CC for the ability. I also like it as a gap closer. There's going to be times where I need to say I'm being attacked by 3 people and I need to get out of there, and they've got me locked down pretty good. If I can target someone that's outside of that skirmish and gap close to them, it's a quick escape for me. So you can use this offensively and defensively, and that playstyle is synergized very well for me. Plus, if you're going to be a Spartan warrior, you better have a shield, right? Um, you have two options here for this next one. I like to use Ransack. Right now, or for the longest time, you've seen a problem with Stamplars is how do we apply major fracture to the target? Like you'll see them throw caltrops on the ground, razor caltrops, and try and get people to try and force people to fight you in that area, right? Well, in this moment, what I like to do is actually shield assault or gap close to the target and then hit them with immediate ransack. Ransack's going to give me minor protection for 15 seconds, so I'm taking 8% less damage, and it's going to apply that major fracture to them, so they're receiving an almost extra 5,300 additional physical damage. And Ransack has a little bit of a damage to it. You can't necessarily taunt players, um, but it's got some damage to it and a super low cost, right? Under 1,000 stamina to do that. So the common play for me is to gap close to a target, stun them, and hit them with a light attack right into a ransack, and then switch to my front bar. Put power light on them and start putting damage into them. And if we can bonk them, we will with Berserker Rage because it is fun. And anyways, I said this is a flex spot because if you don't want to run Ransack and you want to lose major fracture against a target and you want to lose minor protection for 15 seconds, by all means do that. You can put low slash on here and then run either morph, heroic slash or deep slash. I'm a fan of deep slash. It's going to apply a minor maim to the target, and a slow heroic slash will be an additional line of ult gen for you. And so if you're going to switch this out, I would say that would probably be the best way to go, is to put heroic or deep slash there. But for now, I'm just going to stick with ransack. Another thing too, that combo synergizes very well for my playstyle as far as gap closing to a target, because we are running and trapping poisons on our back bar. And I haven't been running these very long, but I noticed that Grim Hollow was running them, and it makes a lot of sense. So in duels, which I don't duel often, I don't enjoy dueling. I duel for training purposes, helping people become better at PvP and stuff. I prefer open world scenario fighting and outnumbered fights. But in duels, don't use these poisons, like it's just cheese. But in open world and outnumbered fights, absolutely use these, okay? Just kind of etiquette, proper dueling etiquette or whatever. But anyways, in trapping poisons, you can see immobilize your victim for 3.5 seconds, and then it increases the cost of the victim's magic abilities by 10% for 6.5 seconds. And so if I am gap closing to a target to stun them, and then I'm turning around and light attack, which is going to apply the immobilization, and then we're going to ransack them and put the major fracture on them. The shield assault is the hard CC. It's the stun. They break free of the stun, but because the light attack applied the poison, they're immobilized also, and they have to break free of that. So we're talking about really hurting their recoveries, right? Here, we're super strong in our recoveries. Like unbuffed, we're hitting, like we said, 2,600 stamina recovery with everything firing, 2,000 health recovery, and 1,400 magic recovery. Our recoveries are really sound. We're making the fight immediately right off the bat a resource issue for them. Now, You could actually run, there's another version of this where instead of increasing the cost of the victim's magic abilities, you could increase the cost of the victim's stamina abilities. So, which would really hurt them considering they had to break free of the hard CC and then turn around and break free of the immobilization. And with the amount of damage you're going to put in, they're going to probably hit a vigor if they're a stamina player, recover from it. And if they're a Magicka player, we just hurt their stamina pool drastically by applying both those at the start of the fight. But we were running into some Nightblades who were very skilled, and so I dropped these on there to hopefully they were hopping in and out of stealth a lot, and I was hoping to put them in a stamina crunch and a magicka crunch and in an extended fight. So, but they were playing masterfully, and we've got a podcast coming out where I'll talk about that. But anyways, entrapping poisons, and you can run it with the magicka cost increase or the stamina cost increase, but the immobilization is the most important part. It really puts people in a bind. Looking at our back bar, we've got repentance, and because we're in duels, I don't know that repentance is the play. It's not needed at all in a duel, right? So you would want to put a different ability here, and there's so many different abilities that you could run there. If you wanted to run javelin or whatever, you already have a hard CC, so I'd have to probably think on that and see what we would want to run in place of that for dueling. But because it's not really my realm of expertise, I do open world and outnumbered situations. We're running repentance, and in Imperial City, the sewers and the districts, there's a lot of mobs to kill, and so those mobs could save your tail, right? You could be in an extended fight with a couple people. If you burst down a couple mobs and then repent them, you're back in the fight very quickly, and so this is super valuable. We're running extended ritual, and extended ritual is a really nice ability that just removes negative effects. The cost on it is extremely high, and we don't have a lot of magicka. Our max mag pool is not very high, so you don't necessarily want to spam this ability, but there are times where you just need to get the bad stuff off of you. The heal on this too, it's a very large area, and when you talk about building a Templar house, your Templar house is your defensive rune and your extended ritual. You put both of those down on the ground and try and keep the fight within that area, and you'll be very strong. And then restoring focus is the play for us. Super low cost, under 800 stamina. And this is going to be our major resolve, which increases our physical and spell resistance. And it gives us that 4,800 additional stamina recovery every 2 seconds. Almost 500 stamina recovery. And then standing within your rune increases your physical resistance, spell resistance granted by 50%. And so if you're getting 5,300, you can basically add another 2,600 on top of that. This is almost a 7 to 8k physical and spell resistance swing just standing in this rune when you get the chance to, and so that adds to your overall tankiness or beefiness. The other ability that we are running on our sword and board is Spell Wall. We talked about this earlier, how we are trying to slow down the process of being bursted down, right? We want to hang out at that 75% or 50% threshold long enough to capitalize on Titanborn's additional perks, right? And so Spell Wall helps you do that as well. Reinforce your shield, allowing you to automatically block all attacks at no cost, reflecting all projectiles cast at you for 7 seconds. The ultimate cost on this is less than our two-hander, Berserker Strike, Berserker's Rage. So if I have a Berserker's Rage up, and say there's like 3 sorcerers overloading me, Berserker's Rage is probably not, no amount of additional tank is going to help me withstand 3 sorcerers overloading me, right? This is the play. I have to go Spell Wall. I have to start reflecting that stuff back at them and give them a reason not to be overloading me, right? Gap close to them, start putting pressure into them, and make use of that 7 seconds. And so situationally, Spell Wall's the play. Now, you don't take 0 damage while you have Spell Wall up. That's also important to know. So AoEs or area of effect abilities on the ground while you're standing in them, those are still doing damage. You can't reflect. You're blocking, but even when you block attacks in this game, you still take damage, right? You still take damage while blocking. And so what you'll see while you hit spell wall, expect your life to still continue to drop when you're under a lot of pressure, but at a much, much, much slower rate. And that's what we kind of want to capitalize on Titanborn. We want our health to be falling at a much slower rate to really capitalize on the 75% and 50%. Okay. Now, I've said this a couple times. We don't plan on hanging out there, and I don't intentionally try and hang out at the 75 or 50%, because that's rolling the dice. That's risky, right? It's just going to happen on its own. You're taking pressure. You're gonna be at the 75. You're gonna be at the 50, especially in the really sweaty fights, right? It's just gonna happen on its own. And when it does happen, I want to be able to hang out there or recover from it easy. So, and because heals are unreliable right now, these two abilities help slow that process. Berserker Rage, Spell Wall. Use them both situationally. You could also hit Spell Wall because it's got a lower cost and then just immediately go into a large group and just start going ham. That's a different play. You can go into a group and then turn around and bonk them with Berserker Rage, and especially if you hit the tank, and strip all his resistances, and you've just got a ridiculous amount of resistances. You're well over resistance cap. But that bonk that you did to everyone that's balled up, and then your turnaround, you're hitting your biting jabs and your reverse slice. It's just a lot of pressure, AoE pressure on groups currently. And so that's another play as well, and you got to play that by ear. But this has just worked really well for me, and it's a very aggressive play style. I do have a Spartan Unleashed 2.0, and in those videos I was running bow. I was actually just leveling my bow, trying to get to where I could have major expedition off the dodge roll, and then ultimately I decided I'm just going to put the Ring of the Wild Hunt on and go to sword and board, because this back bar situation synergizes with my playstyle much more, being able to have a hard CC that's also a gap closer, and then get on them, apply major fracture, and then start putting damage into them. And so this play style was just so much more me than the bow. But I put that video out there just for entertainment purposes. Listen to the music, watch some gameplay, and don't be too critical of what level CP or this, that, or the other. I just attached some music to a BG so people could watch a stamina Templar chopping people down. So anyways, that's the abilities, and we're going to look at the abilities buffed up here real quick. Like we said, 3,600, almost 3,700 on the biting jabs. Reverse slice, just under 5k. We've got the damage multiplier for 17k, 15k bonk on the Berserker Rage, and I literally say bonk every time I hit somebody with it. And let me 5,500 on our gap closer hard CC, that's not too shabby, and then 4,700 on our ransack that's applying major fracture to the target. And we do have a 2,200 hot coming in every 2 seconds for 22 seconds, so that heal is very unassuming, I guess, or I really like that heal that comes in, and it's definitely needed. And then our repentance is 3k health and 3k stamina for each corpse that we consume. So, and that is the abilities. Let's jump into our TAM takeaway broth. Is our food that's going to give us max health. It's going to give us some health recovery, some max stam, and some stamina recovery, and that's just synergized very well with this build. I'd have to say right now, if you're running eternal vigor on any builds, our TAM takeaway broth is an expensive food, but it probably synergizes with that food. It's either this or sugar skulls, right? So, but for stamina classes, we've been running our TAM takeaway broth. We are running the Warrior Mundus Stone, so that way we can get to that 4k unbuffed, or buffed, but not Titanborn buffed weapon damage, and then Titanborn buffed is going to take us 4,500 and above. If you wanted to put a weapon damage glyph on your sword and board, it might give you another 170, 200 weapon damage on that. It's just really I I would rather have the immobilization poisons, so I wouldn't worry about that. But 4K to 5K will get the job done the way this build works with stripping their resistances. So, and food, Mundus, and we are a Nord. So we've got the rugged passive, gives us almost 4K spell and physical resistance. This makes us super tanky. We have ult gen here, 5 ultimate whenever we take damage. This can happen every 10 seconds, and so that's great. And we get some additional stamina, and we get some extra health and cold resistance, and gain immunity to chilled status effects, so we can't be slowed by frost on the ground and things like that, chilled status effect, or gain immunity to chilled status effects so we won't get the minor maim debuff from frost damage. So that's nice. And so that's looking at the food. We talked about the changes that we'd make. As from a gear standpoint, I think right now you really need to stay with Eternal Vigor. Been testing a lot of different builds right now, and just because of the sporadic healing and the performance issues of the game right now with random load screens and just healing acting strange and just everything where it's at right now, I feel like this is the best set to be running. I'm sold on it, on that for sure. And then what do you pair this with? And I'm pairing it with Titanborn. If you want to go a straight damage set, go a straight damage set. If you don't want to wait until you hit 75% health or 50% health to get the damage, but I can tell you that this set's going to out damage them when we do hit the 75 or 50%. So from a total damage output, we're going to have more damage on Titanborn as the fights get real sweaty. You're going to have more upfront damage with New Moon or Ancient Dragon Guard, things like that. So, and now going into next patch, obviously it's going to be the proc set emergence. It's going to be interesting. There are so many proc sets that are getting buffed or the proc conditions are being changed. So this build's going to change going into next set. I'm not going to hamstring myself by not running proc sets. If they're going to make these proc sets available to everyone, then I'm going to run proc sets and kill as many people as I can until some changes are made. So just totally expect next patch that we're going to be running proc sets and absolutely annihilating people, so that way they change it. But so we looked at the stats, we looked at the gear, we looked at the abilities buffed, we looked at our food and Mundus stones, and we talked about the changes you can make to the gear, and then we talked about a couple of the changes you can make to abilities on the bar. I feel like this spell wall and Berserker Rage work out really well. If you want to put Dawnbreaker Smiting here, put Dawnbreaker Smiting. That's up to you. You want to get more ult gen, you want to CC people on your ult, have splash damage, whatever, you do you. This is working out really well for me, and if you haven't tried this yet, give it a try and actually see what I'm talking about. Let's jump into the CP and wrap it up. Right now we got nothing in the apprentice. If you were going to put points in the apprentice, maybe into healing done blessed, but I do not have that. I got 61 points into mastered arms. It increases all of our damage done through direct damage, and so our biting jabs, even though it's an area of effect or conal effect in front of us, it is now actually listed as direct damage, and so increasing our biting jabs damage through Mastered Arms. We also, Mastered Arms increases our Berserker Rage, our Bonk, and that's fun, as well as our Shield Assault. If you wanted to put additional points on this, you'd put it into Physical Weapon Expert to increase your light and heavy attack weave. But on a Stamplar, I'm not sure that that's the play when you're biting jabs is a channeled effect, so you're going to see fewer light attacks than other builds that are not channeling something. Maybe as many light attacks as somebody doing a D-swing, right? Combo. 64 points into Mighty. That gives us plus 13% to our physical poison disease damage, and 84 points into Piercing, so that way our physical penetration's a little over 5k just from that alone. Precise Strike, 61 points into that, takes our critical damage and critical healing up by 21%, and 61 points into Ironclad. Most of the biggest hitting abilities in the game are going to be considered direct damage, and this lowers that. Spell Shield, we've got 45 points into that, so our spell resistance is at 3682 additionally, and that's how we're able to hit cap on our sword and board and be, really tanky on even our two-hander. We're over 30k spell resistance on our two-hander, which isn't necessarily too hard on a Stamplar or Templar in general because they have a plus of spell resistance. 71 points in a medium armor focus because we are 5 medium 2 heavy, and this is going to give us an extra 4800 physical resistance. This is needed on this build, and this is going to get us at or near cap when we're on our two-hand bar and make us feel tankier when we're on our or at or near cap on our sword and board bar, sorry, and near cap on our two-hand bar. And so I spend a lot of points bumping up these two things to get my total stats resistances as high as I can, as opposed to dumping points into the next field. I got 29 points into crit resistance for extra critical resistance. I don't put any points into here. A lot of people dump heavy points into hardy, heavy points into elemental defender, so they get unchained. I'm not really worried about that because our resistances, or our recoveries, sorry, are very good, and not only are our recoveries very good, but our resistances are very good. So in the moment where I get CC'd and I need to break free, basically I'm not worried about saving 80% of the vigor expense that I'm getting ready to do. So not that big of a deal to me. And so I've got 64 points into quick recovery for an extra 13% healing received, and 51 points into Warlord, 1 point into Siphoner. I think this too might be a mistake or a point dump. I don't really know. Act like you didn't even see that. Okay. And then Tenacity, we got 54 points into that. If you want to move those 2 points from Sprinter, put them over here in Tenacity, so we get that to the 12% mark, hopefully. And yeah, the 2 points will put it over 12%. And then Arcanist, we got 37 points into that. We don't have a whole lot of magic abilities, but the one that we do have costs a lot of magicka, so you do need to invest in Arcanist for some magic recovery. And then the build that we have is very good at recoveries on its own, so I think a combination of those two helps out. 64 points into Mooncalf gets it to that 13% stamina recovery, and 61 points into Tumbling to give us an extra 21% reduction to our dodge roll. And we are not a block cast, while our back bar is block cast capable. So if we went to our back bar and we were laying down our rune and laying down our extended wrist ritual, I can block cast, which means holding block and casting those. And you see that my block sigil did not drop during that time frame. Okay, but most of the time it's just reapplying those. So in that moment, I am block casting just for a brief second, and then we're going right back to the offensive. Or I gap close to them, stun them, and then back to the offensive. Okay, so understanding that we're not a block, we can block cast, but we're not going to be holding block. We're not going to stand on our back bar and hold block and burn through our stamina pool. We're going to CC them, turn the fight around, and make it our own fight. So there it is. That's Spartan 2.0. I've tested a lot of builds. This is the one I've kind of come to rest on right now with the situation with performance issues and the sporadic healing right now during Greymore. This build has been really nice, and if you guys are interested, I can get some actual BG footage of this particular play style and what it looks like. Just let me know in the comments below if you want to see that. So be safe out there. COVID's still going on, and looks like there's more rioting going on. Everybody spend time with your families, and please be safe. Thanks.